Welcome. So glad you're here. Welcome to everybody on all of our campuses. Glad you're here as well. Thankful that you're here. And for some of you that are on spring break, it just started. This is like the first weekend for you, and you're here. Personally, so proud of you. Thanks for being here to start off your spring break. I grew up with this really cool grandfather. Anybody else have a cool grandfather? Mine might have been cooler. He went by the name Duke, because his hero, like the guy that he loved, was John Wayne. John Wayne's nickname was the Duke. And if you have no idea who John Wayne was, he's a cowboy actor, and he looked like this. The other reason why my grandfather was nicknamed Duke is because he looked just like this guy. Like, wore a hat like that all the time, drank like real black coffee. He was like a man's man, and he was awesome. Two totally unrelated to what I'm going to talk about quotes tonight from John Wayne that you'll need to hear. First, this one's awesome. Courage is being scared to death, but saddling up anyway. Awesome. More importantly, life is tough, but it's tougher when you're stupid. Words to live by, so smart. My grandfather was an antique woodworker, builder, could build anything in the world. And he told me this story, and I have to share this with you, and I have to believe that it's true. He never told me stories that weren't true, and so I have to believe this one is as well true. When he was building a house, this is my grandpa died about 10 years ago, but years and years ago, he was building his house, and he was using one of those powered nail guns, like one that is just boom, pounds the nails through, and he's up, and he's holding up the 2x4, and as he holds up the 2x4, he's slamming the nails in, shooting the nails in with the gun, and something happened where he looked away, he got distracted, and he shot himself right in the hand, dropped the nail gun down, and he tried to pull the nail out, and he couldn't reach to get the hammer, and his hand was stuck to the 2x4, went all the way through, pierced his hands, blood's running down, and he didn't know what to do, and so he starts yelling to whoever else was in the house as he was building it to come in and get him. So he yells, the first person that comes in is this burly construction dude. He walks in, sees what's going on with my grandpa, sees the bloody hand, and then just gets shaky knees, and he hits the ground, and he passes out. So my grandpa was like, what am I going to do now? This guy's on the ground, so he yells for somebody else to come in. Next person comes in, walks in. Now, I don't know exactly how this all unfolds, but this is the way my imagination takes it. Okay? Woman walks in. Next person walks in is a woman. She comes in. She sees the bloody hand. She looks down and sees that there's a grown man on the fetal position on the ground. She steps over the guy, looks down, takes his hammer, walks up to where my grandpa is, pulls out the nail like a beast, throws the hammer down on the dude, and then walks away with her hands in the air like she's it. Now, I know you've heard this expression before, tough as nails. I think legitimately my grandfather and that woman are as tough as nails, truly. Now, he's as tough as nails physically, but that's really not what we're talking about this week. That's not what we're talking about in this series, is being tough as nails physically. What my grandfather was also is tough as nails spiritually. Now, I don't know when you hear that expression in this context, if someone comes to mind for you, you have someone in your family or someone in your life, someone that's a friend, or a coach, a pastor in mind, that, man, they appear to you as they just have that faith that's so tough that no matter what, it just doesn't move them. They stay true all the time. And I think something that we all have in common, every single one of us has in common, is that all of us want to have the kind of faith that's as tough as nails. I truly believe that we all want that. That is the case even if you don't believe at all. If you wouldn't consider yourself to be a Jesus follower, a believer, and you're a guest, or you just come to church and you like the music or the girls or the pizza or whatever, I still believe that you want to have the kind of faith that I'm describing, that no matter what, Like you believe, nothing can move you. And if you already have faith and you'd consider yourself a believer, don't you want to have that kind? Like when somebody describes you, you'd say, oh my goodness, they have that tough faith. And no matter what, they always hold their ground. I think we all want that. But if I'm honest with you, I don't have that. I'm scared. Oftentimes, I don't give Jesus all of my life. I give him pieces of it, and then I kind of take it back, and I give him aspects of my life, and I take it back. And I'm still learning how to surrender to Jesus. And I'm still in pursuit of becoming this guy that's as tough as nails. And I hope at some point in my life, I can look back and I can say, man, I am that. I hope that would be the case. And I'm sure that some of you are thinking the same thing about your future, that you'd want to be as tough as nails. But here's the reality for most of us, that we're tough. Some of us have faith, and we're tough, but it's tough until something comes up on Sunday night, and you bail on your friends and bail on church. Tough until you're on the phone late at night, and you're looking at what you know you don't want to look at, but you keep looking at it. Tough until your ex comes back into the picture, and your ex is like your nemesis. It's your kryptonite. It's the one that no matter what, they keep coming back in your life, and you struggle. And you go back into the old ways. Tough until she or he comes along, and like you just have that issue of girls or boyfriends or girlfriends or whomever comes in and just kind of messes up your faith. You know, tough until someone brings up really good points about Christianity and science or evolution, and then you're really not sure you have that kind of faith anymore. Tough until a loved one dies, or tough until that party, the party you get to, and you know who you are and you know what you're trying to become, but when you get there, everything gets pushed aside with your belief. Well, listen, I think most of us, in fact, I think all of us want to have this kind of faith that's as tough as nails. But the question really is how? How do we get there? We're talking about this guy named Daniel for the next several weeks, and we're doing this actually as an entire church. It's an Old Testament book written by Daniel, about Daniel, and he is really a remarkable dude. In fact, one of the facts about Daniel as it starts out is that Daniel is a teenager. So I love that we're telling this story about Daniel, and then it begins in those teen years, and then we'll follow him into adulthood. Because our church, we really care about teenagers. We don't care about teenagers because we think in some future context they'll thrive. We care about teenagers because of who you are today and the difference that you can make right now. And so we're excited about this idea of studying the book of Daniel together as an entire church and learning together about this guy that who truly was tougher than nails. It starts out about 605 years before Jesus was on the scene. And it's in Jerusalem that he lives. This is his hometown. And the city is a God-fearing city for the most part. It's a Jewish city. And it gets taken over by this evil king named Nebuchadnezzar. We'll just shorten it up to King Boo. King Boo's taken over Jerusalem, and he's trying to transition it from this God-fearing culture to a Babylonian pagan culture. If you're not familiar with what Babylonian culture would be like, or pagan culture, it'd be that they have belief in multiple gods. They had temple prostitution. They had animal sacrifices, and the type of sexual immorality that would actually physically make us sick if we were to talk about it. I mean, it's the type of culture that would be awful. So King Nebuchadnezzar comes into the city, takes all of the city over and all of the surrounding area, and then he starts out with a couple of guys that he has this plan for, and Daniel is a part of this plan. And what I wanted to share with you is I think there's 3 tests of toughness that begin with Daniel. 3 tests of toughness that Daniel experienced. And what I think you'll find as you listen in is that these 3 tests you and I face as well. These are tests that are really relevant to us today. It begins in verse 4. This is within the first test. It's his worldview. Here's the verse. It says, young men without any physical defect. This is the men that the king Nebuchadnezzar, King Boo, chose to pull out. He wanted to bring these handful of men, and he's going to take them to another country. And outside of this country, he's going to do a few things. So young men without physical defect, handsome, showing aptitude for every kind of learning, well-informed, quick to understand, and qualified to serve in the king's palace. He was to teach them the language and the literature of the Babylonians. The first test that Daniel experienced with these guys was a test of worldview. Worldview says this: what do I believe? Worldview says, what do I believe? Now, when he goes to Babylon, which is in modern-day Iraq, and he starts to be transformed, and they're trying to change what he believes. They're trying to indoctrinate him into pagan way of thinking. They're trying to remove from him his belief system. He's a believer in God, and they want to take that away. They want to remove from him his belief and his worldview. They want to take everything that he's learned and he's gained and his source of truth, and they want to take that away from him. And that's why they send him to Babylon, is to do that. And I don't know if you've been in a place yet in your life. I don't know if you've experienced this at school or if you've experienced this in your family or with your friends. If someone has challenged or tested your worldview, what you believe in. A couple months ago, I was sitting down with a friend, and this friend is not a believer. And it is really just asking some questions of me about why I've chosen to believe what I do. And his biggest question, the question that he actually started out with, was this. He said, hey, I just can't wrap my mind around the idea that you believe in a God that's all about love, all about humanity, but yet such evil takes place. You know, pretty common question. I answered him like this. I said, I think your question is super valid. In fact, I've wrestled with that myself. I've thought about that a lot. I know lots of people have. I probably had this question asked of me 50 times, and so I understand it and I appreciate the question. But I think the question has a problem, and there's a question that goes before the question, in fact. Really what happens is you and I can agree that there is, as we look around in this world around us, there is morality. Like there's evil and there's good, there's right and there's wrong. We can see that there's truth that exists, there's absolutes that exist. So we can agree to that. The problem is, where does that come from? Where does that come from in your mindset? Because if it comes from our society or from our government, from the world that we live in, if it comes only from our parents, and if from generation to generation it can change, like our morality can change, then we have a problem. Because I don't think you want that. I don't think I want that. We don't see that around here. There's some things that are always wrong. There are aspects of our world that are always wrong, and there's always this set and established framework of morality. And so I think the question is, where does that come from? I have faith that comes from a God that created good and allows evil. And someday, this powerful, all-loving God is going to make everything right. And I don't have an answer for all of the little reasons why he's chosen to. But we both have to have faith. You're going to have faith that comes from somewhere. I'm going to have faith that comes from somewhere. Mine is that it comes from a creative God. So I don't know if you've been in that position before where you've had to answer one of those questions. Those are tough, and I don't feel like I ever totally nail it. Like there's answers that I have, and there's things that I'm wrestling with, and in all honesty, there's no way I'm going to be able to truly answer the way that I want to in those settings. But I let God speak through me, and I trust. And so if you've been in any of those situations before where somebody challenges your worldview, maybe in your household someone challenges what you believe in. Maybe you've got friends that challenge what you believe in. But I know this to be true. This is the test. That if you want to be as tough as nails, that we all have to learn what we believe in. If we want to be as tough as nails, like Daniel was, then we have to learn what we believe in. And Daniel passed his test. How did he pass his test? We'll come to it at the end. The second test that he faces is that of identity. Second test is that of identity. Identity says this: who am I? Like, who am I? The verse we'll look at is this picture where Daniel is taken to Babylon, and the first thing they do when they get to Babylon is they change his name. It says, among those who were chosen were some from Judah: Daniel, Hananiah, Mishael, and Azariah. The chief officials gave them new names. Here's the new names. To Daniel, the name Belteshazzar. To Hananiah, Shadrach, to Mishael, Meshach, and to Azariah, Abednego. See, Daniel's name had meaning. It's this: God is my judge. They changed it to a Babylonian pagan name that says this: Lady, protect the king. This is a feminine name. It's a pagan deity. And the idea behind this is a little obscure. We're not exactly sure what that means, Lady, protect the king. It's definitely strange, but it's an insult for sure. And an insult because it's taken away the name that he was given. And understand this: in biblical times, names had meaning, like had significance and value to who you were. It was closely connected with your family, with your upbringing, with your heritage. Sometimes parents crafted names because it was in their family line, but it was also names that they wanted to kind of project faith and project their future into them. Names had meaning. And so what King Boo was trying to do with Daniel and his friends is remove their identity and who they were, changing who they were by removing that name that had meaning, their identity. I don't know if your name has meaning. I don't know if you've ever gone in pursuit of this, if your parents have told you this or not, if your name has meaning. I had no idea what my name meant up until about 3 or 4 days ago. Checked the old Google machine and found that my name means brave warrior. I was like, I'll stick with that. That's cool. You can call me that. You can call me that from here on out. Like, no longer is it Dustin, it's brave warrior. I'm going with that. You know, I named my son Strias because I wanted him to have a very unique name. I didn't want anybody else to have it. I don't want him to stand in line in PE class and doing roll call and there's 7 of his names. I wanted him to have his very own, and I wanted it to be strong and sound strong because our hope for him is that he's going to be a warrior for Jesus. That's our hope. Our names mostly don't have meaning. I don't know if your name has meaning, but here's the reality that who we are doesn't necessarily have to do with our name. The problem is that in our society today, we don't really know how to determine who we are. We get a little lost in this. I think we get a little confused in this. And in Babylon, as well as today, there's kind of some confusion about who we are, right? There's confusion about gender. There's confusion about sexuality. There's all kinds of confusion about truth. And that's the world that Daniel was living in. And quite frankly, you guys know it way better than I do. That's the world that you're living in right now. There's confusion about identity. But I want you to know this, that you're not just what you see in the mirror, whether you like it or not. You're not what you read on a scale. You're not your GPA, whether it's good or bad. You're not the championships and the trophies and the school records that you're trying to get to. You know, you're not what your parents project on you. You're not your social media popularity or lack thereof. You're not your mistakes or your success for that matter. You know, you're not your hobbies or your passions or your interests. You know, gamer, athlete, artist. However you would describe yourself, whatever you'd say you're about or what you like to do, those things can be descriptions, but that is not your identity. That's not who you are. And one of the most important questions you will ever answer in your life is who you are. And the problem is there's a world around us trying to define you. Daniel answered this question so well. Daniel answered this test so well. You'll never be as tough as nails. You will never be as tough as nails if you don't know who you are. How did Daniel pass this test? How do we pass this test? We'll come back to it in a minute. The third test that he faces is that of conviction. Conviction says, what do you stand for? What do you stand for? You know, when it comes down to it, Daniel had to face this. And what's cool is Daniel put himself through his own test. They were trying to get him to consume food and drink that would be sacrificed to idols. And he said, no, I'm not doing it. Listen, I'm not doing it. So he said, here's what you can do. You can feed me vegetables. Like, feed me vegetables, I'll drink water, and then everybody else will drink like the good stuff and eat the good stuff. And at the end of 10 days, me and my friends, you can test us and see if we look lethargic, if our mindset isn't in the right place, and you can see if we're not better than everybody else. So take 10 days and test us. The problem with this test is he could lose his life because of it. Just by refusing to eat food like this, he could lose his life. And so Daniel is holding his ground here. And this test is pretty significant. So this is what the text says. It says, please test your servants for 10 days. Give us nothing to eat but vegetables and water to drink. 10 days go by. The king, the servant that was working for the king, they both came and tested Daniel and his friends. And it says that he was 10 times better than everybody else. 10 times better. Why did Daniel stand up like that? Well, he's standing up for what he believes in, for what is right, because he's a man of conviction. Now, have you ever had to stand up for what you believe in? Have you ever had to stand up for your convictions? I remember being in high school as a freshman and a sophomore, and I just started to learn about Jesus and started to come and follow after him and was learning. And at the same time, I was hanging out with some friends that would always invite me to their parties. And one of the things that I had to come to grips with is that I wasn't going to be a person that went to a party and drank. As I understood that at the time, that's not what God wanted for me. And so I would always show up to the party with a 7-Eleven Slurpee, half cherry, half Coke, every single time. And I'd show up, and that's what I'd drink when I was there. Everybody else knew it. They tried to get me to drink alcohol. They tried me to get to smoke weed. I just told them, that's not who I am. I had to hold to my convictions. And if you've been there before, you know it's not all that popular. It's not all that easy to do that. But that's what you have to do. Because here's the deal. If you want to be as tough as nails, then you need to know what you stand for. You need to have those convictions ready to go. You know, here's what's interesting. If you look at all three of these tests that Daniel passed, all three of these tests that he went through, there's really one word that sort of sums it all up. How was he able to remain tough as nails? It's verse 8. Read this with me. It says, but Daniel resolved not to defile himself with the royal food and wine, and he asked the chief official for permission not to defile himself this way. The word resolved, if I could translate that in a different way, kind of give you a different definition, would be this. He made up his mind. See, what Daniel did is he made up his mind what he believed. He made up his mind who he was, and he made up his mind what he would stand for. And all three of those tests, he passed with flying colors because he's tough as nails. And for you and me, the same would be true. If we want to be tough, we've got to know what we believe. We've got to know who we are. And we've got to know what we stand for. And if you're a Christian, I'll offer one direction. It's John 14:6. It says, I'm the way, the truth, and the life. This is Jesus speaking. He says, I'm the way, the truth, and the life. No one comes to the Father except through me. If you want to be tough as nails, I do. If you want that as well, then Jesus is the answer to each one of those tests that we face throughout our life. Jesus is the answer to our belief, what we believe in. We believe in Jesus. Our identity comes from Jesus. We get that from him. And what our convictions are and what we stand on come from Jesus. We have to make up our mind. And listen, students, we have to make up our mind long before the party starts. We've got to make up our mind who we are long before it's midnight and we're by ourselves and we're looking at things on the internet or we have accessibility to the internet. We have to know who we are long before that friend group is around. We've got to know who we are before we get to college. Because as you know, as you can imagine, it doesn't become easier to be a follower of Jesus as you get older. It gets tougher. But you can make it. And you can make a change. I want to share one last story of a student that had to make up his mind. Let's check this out.
Probably back when I was 4 years old, I started t-ball. I remember vain memories of playing baseball, meeting new kids, just having a good time, just chasing the ball around. And then I got to high school, and then that's when it started to get serious. My name is Andres Lopez. I go to La Jolla Community High School, and I'm a senior. My identity was wrapped up in baseball, because that's pretty much all I cared about. That's what I put forward. That's what the baseball kids did, so I kind of did the same. They kind of put their motives and passions in baseball before anything else. Kids at school would just notice me for just playing baseball, nothing else. I thought baseball was going to be my future. I was going to go hard at this sport because I cared about it so much. I had so much passion for the game. So last year I was kind of in a dark place where I had these addictions and I was kind of fighting them. So as I went to church more, I kind of got over these things, my addictions, and living in light more than darkness. And I kind of found myself being more happy. Well, I went to camp this year with not knowing anybody from my group because I didn't go to church that often last year. So when camp came, I was excited, but yet I didn't know anybody in my church group or my small group. And then when I went to church camp, we kind of all engaged and bonded together, and I made friends that I didn't think I was going to make on this trip. And they kind of took me in, and they kind of showed me a way to life that I didn't see before. Because when I was doing baseball and all that stuff, I was kind of isolated to myself, and I kind of only viewed myself only doing this one activity. And they kind of showed me that there's more to life. And then I went to Mexico, which gave me a different perspective, how I view myself and view others, and how I take advantage of the things I have sometimes. And the kids down there don't have very much, so they take an account for what they have and they make the best of it. So I kind of realized that there's more to life than just what I have. And the more I went to church, the more my heart started to switch over and change. I decided not to play baseball this year because I thought my faith was bigger than my passion for baseball, because I felt that God was calling me to serve for His church. And I want to be known for more than just baseball. The backlash I received because I decided to do something greater than what I was capable of was pretty intense and hostile, because the kids I usually hang out with are usually just baseball kids. So when I told them that I wasn't going to play anymore, they kind of shunned me out like someone they didn't know, someone they'd never met, someone they didn't like, just because I wanted to do something greater that I was fully capable of doing and wanted to do. Going to church, having a small group, going to Mexico, doing all these other activities changed my perspective, because I realized that I wanted to be someone who was known to believe in God. I wanted to be known for someone who was going to church. I wanted to be the person who was known for inviting people and showing people the way of God. I want to kind of have people see me as a loving, caring person. I want to be seen as a person that you can come to when you have a problem. I want to be known as for someone who's caring and loving and open-minded, because that's someone who I want to be. I kind of wanted to go back to the game, but yet again, I found my passion and my passion in going to church far more greater than doing baseball. I'm Andres Lopez, and I'm a Christ-centered difference maker.
Pretty brave story, and I was talking to Andres a little bit ago, and we were talking about this last year, and a couple months ago, watched him get baptized in the Avondale campus, gave his life to Jesus, and asked him about camp this summer. You going to camp? He's graduating, and he's like, I wouldn't miss it, showing up to camp this summer, and he's just made some really important decisions. And I wanted you to hear something, though, as well, that Andres' decision to follow after Jesus in this way doesn't necessarily mean that everybody has to quit their sport, has to quit their activities. He's not saying that at all. It's just that he made up his mind to pursue Jesus, and what Jesus was calling him to do were those things, and he was obedient to that. And that's where the bravery lies. That's where the courage lies, is fulfilling that and following through with that. And so I think it's amazing that he's asking this question. These are the things that I want to be known for. Maybe that's the question that I'll pose to you. What do you want to be known for? What type of person do you want to be known for on your sports team, in your school, with your friend groups? What do you want to be known for? Well, I pray that all of us over the course of the next couple of weeks in the series would learn how to be tough as nails. We'd continue to learn from Daniel. And the way that we're all going to learn from Daniel as a church is something that's pretty cool. It's out of the YouVersion Bible. If you've never done a reading plan before out of YouVersion, they really are super helpful for some of us that just don't read naturally. This kind of reminds us. This is an app that you can download, Bible app. And then once you have the Bible app downloaded, you can search for Tough as Nails under the reading plans in Daniel. It's a 25-day plan. It's a little bit of reading every single day. It's not too much. But if you want it to start shaping what you believe and start identifying who you are and helping to build some of those convictions, the first place we start is Scripture, because Scripture is our source of truth, and it points us to Jesus. And so my challenge for all of our students on all of our campuses, I know you guys can do this, even if you never read the Bible and you have no concern about Bible reading whatsoever, or if you're into reading it on occasion, everybody can read for the next 25 days and all get on the same page with this book of Daniel. So in a couple minutes, your campus student pastor will come out, your host will come out and share a little bit about the details from that. If you need to take a picture of that because you won't remember exactly how to find that, you can do that. But my prayer is that everybody, every one of us, as we pursue this courageous, tough faith like Daniel had, that we would all learn a little bit from him on how to be tough as nails. Let me pray for us, and we'll get out of here. Father, thank you so much. We're grateful for you, and we do all desire to be stronger and greater and better than we have right now, and I know you do as well. You have ambition and desire for us beyond what we can even imagine. Help us to learn exactly what that is. Help us to surrender to you and come to you and learn from you. We love you. It's in your name that we pray. Amen.